All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about car loans in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that I know very little about, and I'm really interested to learn about it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. We've got a video from Tom and Ruth Adventures on YouTube.
Cool.
They recently bought a car in the Philippines and kind of went through the whole process of getting a car loan and buying a car and all that stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so if anyone's thinking about moving to the Philippines and buying a car, this is the episode to listen to.
Definitely, yeah.
And, I have to say right off the bat that there were a lot more cons than pros
Yeah.
when it came to Tom's experience
Yeah.
with getting a car loan in the Philippines.
Yeah, he really struggled to come up with anything positive about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you mentioned any pros.
I think it was just like a whole long list of cons.
Yeah. So that's a little skimmy to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of the downsides are that the interest rates are insane, like 20 to 40%,
Well, that's wild.
which is crazy. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't see anything like that in the US or Europe.
That's insane. Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then they also require you to show like 6 to 8 months of bank statements
Really?
and like huge down payments,
Wow.
like 25% at least.
Jeez. So you really have to have your finances together to even be considered.
Yeah, you have to be very prepared and have a lot of money saved up already.
So 25% down payment. That means if you want to buy a $20,000 car,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to put down $5,000.
Yeah.
Just right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Which is a lot of money for most people.
Yeah, it is for me.
Yeah.
So, I was listening to them talk about the process, and they were saying you often can't even pay off the loan early.
Right.
And I was thinking, what
Yeah.
if you come into some extra money or you decide
Right.
you just want to be done with it?
Yeah, why would you not be able to do that?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
It seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
But I guess from the bank's perspective, it makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because they're making money off that interest.
Of course.
So the longer that you have the loan out, the more money they're going to make.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, they want you to have it for the full 5 to 8 years or however long the term is.
Wow. So you really have to know that you're going to be able to make those payments
For sure.
that whole time.
Absolutely.
The big
Commitment.
Yeah. So what else did we learn about the process of getting car loans in the Philippines?
Well, they also talked about the used car market.
Yeah. What was that like?
Sounds like it's pretty rough.
Okay.
He was seeing used cars for like $5,000 to $8,000
Yeah.
that were in pretty bad shape.
So those are like really old cars that are really beat up.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Wow. And they still cost that much?
Yeah, because there's not a lot of options.
Wow.
And he warned about the potential hidden problems.
Aye.
You know, maybe it wasn't maintained properly or there's parts that are worn out that you don't know about.
Yeah, I guess that's a risk you run anytime you buy a used car, but
Yeah.
especially in a place where you might not know as much about the market.
Right, exactly. You really have to know what you're looking for.
So it's probably a good idea to have it checked out by a mechanic before you buy it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You don't want to get stuck with a lemon.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
So after all this research, what was Tom's ultimate advice to people who are looking to buy a car in the Philippines?
Pretty much, if you can swing it, just pay cash up front.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no loans, no restrictions, no worries.
Yeah, but not everybody has $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 lying around
Right, that's true.
to just pay for a car in cash.
Yeah.
So are there other options besides traditional bank loans if you're looking to finance a car?
Yeah, he mentioned some other financing options like loans for appliances.
Cody.
But those interest rates are even higher, like 40%.
Oh my gosh. That's insane.
I know.
You'd almost be better off just saving up the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough situation
It is.
to be in, I guess. Yeah.
So, but it's always good to have a backup plan
Right.
and be financially prepared.
Tom and Ruth talked about how they went through an economic downturn, and they were really glad that they had a plan in place.
Yeah, it's important to be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, because you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So we talked about all the downsides of financing a car in the Philippines,
Yeah.
the high interest rates, the lack of flexibility,
Right.
the risks of the used car market.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
It can. But now you're armed with this knowledge,
Right.
so hopefully you can avoid some of these pitfalls.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
And that's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive, giving you the knowledge you need to make smart decisions.
Exactly.
So stick around because we're going to talk about some ways that you can potentially outsmart the system
Yes.
and find some creative alternatives to traditional financing in the Philippines.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back, and we've just established that financing a car in the Philippines is a bit of a minefield.
Yeah. It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, but let's say you've done your due diligence,
Yeah.
you've weighed all the pros and cons, and you've decided you absolutely need a loan.
Right.
What are some steps you can take to maybe make the process a little less painful?
Well, the first thing is don't just jump on the first loan offer you see.
Yeah, shop around.
Yeah, exactly. Shop around, compare interest rates from different banks.
Yeah.
Look at the loan terms, look for any hidden fees that might sneak up on you.
Yeah, those are always fun.
Yeah, they can really add up.
Yeah, so it's like with any major purchase, you want to make sure you're getting the best deal possible.
Absolutely. You've got some leverage, so use it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We often forget that these things are negotiable.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but what if traditional bank loans just aren't working for you? Are there any other options out there worth considering?
There are a few alternative paths you could explore. One that's becoming increasingly popular in the Philippines is peer-to-peer lending.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I don't really know what it means. Is it like borrowing money from a friend?
It is similar in a way because you're basically cutting out the banks,
Okay.
but it's a bit more structured with peer-to-peer lending. You're borrowing money directly from individuals or investors.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So instead of dealing with a big bank, I'd be working with actual people.
Yeah, exactly. And it's often done through online platforms that connect borrowers with lenders.
Oh, so it's all done online.
Yeah, for the most part.
But how do you know if these lenders are trustworthy? I mean, isn't there a bit more risk involved?
That's a fair concern, and that's why it's really important to do your research.
Yeah, makes sense.
There are several reputable peer-to-peer lending platforms in the Philippines, but you need to look into them carefully.
Right.
Look at their history, their track record. Read reviews from other borrowers.
So it's kind of like checking someone's references before you hire them.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and the potential upside is that you might be able to get a lower interest rate
Oh, okay. Well, that's always a good thing.
because you're cutting out the middleman, the banks.
Yeah, that makes sense. But let's be real for a second. Even with all these strategies, loans can still feel like a burden.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I always come back to this one basic principle. The best loan is the one you don't have to take out at all.
I mean, you can't argue with that logic.
Right.
But how do you avoid a loan when you really need a car?
Well, it comes down to one thing, the power of saving.
Oh, yeah, saving, that's a good one.
I know it can be a long and sometimes tedious process.
Yeah, especially when you're excited about getting a new car.
Exactly. But the longer you're willing to wait and save, the less you'll have to borrow and the less you'll end up paying in interest over time.
So it's about playing the long game.
Exactly.
Okay, I see your point. And, while you're saving, you can also use that time to really do your research on the car you want, compare prices, maybe even snag a better deal down the line.
Absolutely. You're not just delaying gratification. You're using that time strategically.
I like that.
All right.
So we've covered traditional bank loans, peer-to-peer lending, and the good old-fashioned save up and pay cash approach.
Right.
What else is there? I mean, you mentioned something called Palawagan earlier, and I have to admit that one went completely over my head.
Yes, the Palawagan. This is actually a really interesting system that's very common in the Philippines.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It's basically a rotating savings and credit association.
A rotating what now?
Rotating savings and credit association. It's kind of like a community-based savings and loan system.
Okay, that sounds a lot less intimidating.
So imagine a group of people, friends, family members, colleagues, who all pool their money together regularly.
Okay, I'm following.
And each member of the group takes turns receiving a lump sum from that pool.
So it's like everyone's helping each other out.
Exactly. It's built on trust and social connections.
I like that. It really emphasizes the community aspect.
Yeah, it's a great example of how communities can come together to support each other financially.
But are there any downsides to this system? I mean, it can't all be perfect, right?
Well, like any financial arrangement, there's always some level of risk.
Yeah, of course.
It relies heavily on trust and accountability. You're depending on everyone in the group to make their contributions on time and honor their commitments.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're putting a lot of faith in the people involved.
Right. And of course, there's no formal legal framework backing it up, so you need to be comfortable with that.
Okay, so it's definitely not for everyone.
Mhm.
But it's a really interesting concept, and it shows that there are often multiple paths to reaching our goals.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And sometimes those paths are a little less conventional.
Exactly. And when it comes to financing in the Philippines, it's really important to keep an open mind and explore all your options.
I completely agree.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Don't feel limited by the traditional financing options. Get creative. Explore those alternative avenues. Tap into your community. And remember, there's usually more than one way to get where you want to go. All right, so here we are in the final stretch of our deep dive into financing in the Philippines. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from the nitty-gritty details of loans to those more outside-the-box options like peer-to-peer lending and that Pulawagan thing.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned a ton.
Mm.
And it really hit me that this goes beyond just buying a car. This is about bigger financial decisions in general.
It's about being financially aware, making smart choices, and I'd say most importantly, taking control of your money.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, knowledge is power. And when it comes to finances, well, that power can really make or break you.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a big purchase. Like, who doesn't love the idea of having a new car?
Yeah.
But it's crucial to step back and really look at your finances. It's like building a house. You gotta make sure that foundation is solid before you do anything else.
I love that analogy. So as we wrap things up here, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will remember?
Well, I hope they've gotten a better grasp on the unique challenges and opportunities that come with financing in the Philippines. It's not the same system you'll find everywhere else, and knowing that is a huge first step.
Definitely. And I also hope our listeners feel empowered to explore those creative alternatives we talked about, peer-to-peer, lending the Pulawagan, even just sticking to a good savings plan.
Yeah, those are great examples of how there's often more than one way to reach your goals.
Exactly. It's all about thinking outside the box, challenging those norms, and finding what truly fits your own situation and values.
Because what works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. The important thing is to find what works for you.
Couldn't agree more. And maybe even more importantly, I hope everyone listening feels more confident about navigating the world of personal finance.
Because confidence comes from knowing what you're doing. And by taking the time to understand how financing works, you're already ahead of the game.
So to close out this deep dive, imagine yourself a year from now. You either got that car or you're well on your way, and you've made smart choices that align with your goals. What can you do today to make that happen?
That's a great question to think about. It all starts with taking that first step, no matter how small.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and helpful.
Absolutely. Until next time, everyone, happy driving.